Well, today is Sunday, the 7th of January 2018, not 2017, as I accidentally said in my last video. 2018, Sunday, January 7, and it's the 14th birthday of a certain boy I know. John is 14 today, and the last time I saw John, he told me something interesting, that he was doing an assignment at school on volcanoes. And the very first time I met John, he made a rather rude comparison between tornadoes, and you can probably guess what a tornado resembles in the mind of a 9-year-old boy. He mentioned God, actually, as well, in his comparison. And I was like, you know what? Kids are interesting. They don't really have any... if they're in the company of a person who they feel at ease with, they just say whatever. I think that's actually pretty cool. That's why I like kids. And it's also why I don't like some adults, because everything they say is contrived and garbage. And that lady you're looking at there, she actually lost her house in a fire that was started by no one knows what by, but it's kind of weird because she had come forward and said that she was sexually assaulted by this man who happens to be a US senator and a former judge. And now her house has been burnt down, so that's interesting. And then we had a story. There was a story back there on an 11-year-old boy who has to go to court now because he lit a couple of fires. 2 fires, I think. 2 fires, 1 boy, which is a little different to this story by R.L. Stine, where there's twins, identical twins. So it's like 1 boy split in 2. And Daniel and Samuel are an interesting combination because Daniel is the one described as evil, but Samuel is the one who actually does the fire starting and killing. And I don't know, it's a weird dynamic. Anyway, because of the fact that today is John's birthday, for starters, and because of a few things to do with this book by R.L. Stine, and because of the fact that, what's another reason? It's actually not just about 12-year-old twins. The boys in this story are 12. Daniel and Samuel are 12 years old. So we've got the 12-year-old identical twins. But it's also about 16-year-old twins, because today, January 7, if you go back 16 days, it was the 22nd of December. And today is Sunday. The 22nd of December was Friday. And it would have been the 35th birthday of Ebony Simpson. Now if I swing my camera around, that's Ebony right there. Ebony Simpson. And Ebony was the victim of a murder back in 1992. And that there is an eagle feather from a wedge-tailed eagle. So, back to the news for today, January 7, 2018. And I'll have to adjust to the size of the screen. Can I do it? Yes, there we go. And yeah, the time there is 14:37 right now in the bottom right corner. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, 14:37. Dead equals 14, hell equals 37. The dead-held twins is kind of a way you could describe the boys from this story, Daniel and Samuel. They are twin boys who die in a hurricane. And like I said, they're 12-year-old boys. Twin angels. But are they angels? Or demons? As I said, this is not just about 12-year-old twins. I also came up with my own 16-year-old twins, Jayton and Demas. And like I said, 16 days ago, it was Ebony's birthday. It was Friday, the 22nd of December, 2017. Ebony would have turned 35. And what happened that day? Well, that was the day that the Thomas Fire in Southern California became the largest fire in California's history. And it actually happened as the fire was winding down, as the firefighters were gaining control of the fire. It became the largest in history. So that was kind of interesting. And just there, just before the emergency warning came on, the time was 14:39, as in dead angel. And we're minus 52 minutes. That's the value of the word devil, is 52. And demon, 51. But then again, angelic is also 51. So take your pick. Okay. 16-year-old twins. So the Thomas Fire became the biggest in recorded history of California on that date, the 22nd of December, Friday 22nd of December. If we go back 16 days before that, it was Wednesday, December 6, 2017. And that was the anniversary of something that happened to me when I was 13. I was 13 years old, and I was at Western Park in Canberra, and I wandered away from my end of year school picnic, and I got approached by a guy who, in hindsight, was obviously like a sexual predator or something like that. Well, I guess there's not too many other things like that, are there? But, you know, I'm not talking about the type that just wants to, you know, sexually harass you. I'm talking about a really bad kind of person. And fortunately for me, or depends how you look at it, I suppose, I got away from him. I say it depends how you look at it, because getting away from someone really evil is only the first hurdle in surviving something. Survival's not necessarily a great thing. I was unable to tell anyone what happened to me. I tried to tell a teacher, but I couldn't really remember much of what had happened. I didn't actually know what had happened. I had no concept of what had happened, really. I was very innocent when I was 13. And I basically, the response I got from the person in charge of my year at school was, well, why didn't you come and tell me this yesterday? And that was because it took me too long to go see him. In his eyes, I should have come and seen him the day before. Because I couldn't, because I was in shock. And I mean, I was really in shock, because I lost several hours where I didn't remember anything at all. And I don't, to this day, actually know what happened, or how I got away. And some people think it's really scary to hear this, like, it's like, oh my god, so you had something happen to you and you don't remember what it was, man, that's terrifying. And it's like, well, it's not that bad, because I don't remember it. You know, it would be bad if I did remember it, but I don't. So I'm kind of blessed in a way. But what has made it bad, what did make it bad, was having an adult authority figure turn around and sort of put the blame onto me. It was like, why didn't you come and tell me this yesterday? Did you get the number plate of the car? Well, there's not much I can do about it now, kind of stuff. I don't blame that person, because I didn't convey enough information to him for him to understand something had actually happened. He thought I was just being a pain in the butt, basically. And had he realized that oh my god, something actually happened, he would have reacted very differently. But, you know, he's not the last person I ever told. He was the last person I told for quite a long time. I did mention it in a very offhand manner to my mum a couple of weeks later. And because I mentioned an aquarium, because the guy, that's how he bribed me, he said, do you want to go see an aquarium? She remembered that. like 20 years later when I brought it up again. She says, "Oh yeah, I do remember you mentioning that, the aquarium man." And I said, "Yeah," because it was like 18 years later or something when I finally started to get more of an understanding of what had happened to me. Not in the form. It didn't come as a linear memory, like a memory, like a normal memory of what happened. I still don't have that, but through feelings, emotions, I began to realize that there was something in me that I had never really dealt with, and I had to go about dealing with it in a very abstract kind of way. And the way I dealt with it was through basically empathizing with the victims of crimes and tragedies, other victims. So the first one was Ebony, whose photo I showed you just before, and she was the first one, and that was quite a long time ago. That was not too long though before I went looking for the place at Western, which turned out to be Western Park in Canberra, on the edge of Lake Burley Griffin. But then there was another boy, Ralph Morris, who died in 1899 after his boss set fire to his bed. And his death went virtually unreported. It was reported, but it was reported as an accident. In actual fact, it was more straight out murder. He was sick with a fever, and his boss set his straw bed on fire. Now, this boy slept in the stables. He was 9 years old. And this was at the Monte Cristo homestead, quite a well-known place at Junee in New South Wales, reputedly Australia's most haunted house. Ralph was one of 10 people who died there, died in violent or accidental ways, and tragic ways. There were more than one murder there, at least 3-4 murders that I know of, at least 2 of which were committed by the same guy that killed Ralph. So Ralph burnt, but he didn't die till 10 weeks later. So he suffered for 10 weeks. In 1899 they did not have treatments for burns. So it was, you can't imagine how much he would have suffered before he died. 9-year-old boy. Ebony was also 9. Then the next person I connected with was Jake. Jake, 11-year-old boy from St. Joseph in Minnesota. Jake was abducted by a sexual predator, and after being molested, driven to a remote location, sexually molested, and then he was shot because the guy simply didn't know what else to do with him. And at least that's what he has told. Nobody really knows for sure exactly what happened, but that's what he said. And then after Jake, and I'll tell you something interesting too to do with this book, because I found this book on Halloween, which I think was something Jake liked, was Halloween, and Jake was missing when I came across him. Missing equals 90 if you add up the letters. Jacob Owen Wetterling equals 233. Kelly, my last name, equals 65. And birthday equals 87. Now the prediction I'm making is for twin hurricanes, but in Australia we call them tropical cyclones. And my prediction is for tropical cyclones Riley and Savannah. And it's for Friday the 9th of March 2018. And the point of the prediction, the reason, the motive, is to send a message against people like Christopher William Crawley, who murdered his 9-year-old servant boy, stable hand, Ralph, all those years ago. Because, interestingly, Christopher Crawley was very highly respected because he was wealthy and powerful. He owned all the land. So people had to look up to him. They had no choice. It's kind of like the same reason people look up to even the biggest morons that are in positions of power today. And the most, awful people sometimes end up being having the most senior positions. because they're the biggest bullies, they can end up going to the top. Happens quite a lot. So the bully that I encountered recently was none other than the Australian government. Department of Immigration and Border Protection cut me off, brutally cut me off from my partner. And of course this is a department headed up by Peter Dutton, who I see as being a true thug and a very nasty, poor excuse for a human being. And that's because of all the propaganda that he spreads of a racist nature. But he's also shown some extremely homophobic tendencies too. And so I knew I was taking a big risk doing a partner visa application, which was going to be processed by a department that was headed up by someone like him. But what I didn't expect was to have no notification of the outcome of the decision. So for months and months, most of last year went by without me knowing what had happened. And they know everything about my history. They know my past. They know what happened to me as a kid. And they know how important it was to me that I was able to be with my partner. My first partner. My only partner. And my best friend. Which means a lot more than partner to me. So to cut me off, brutally cut me off, like they did, is probably the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life. Worse than what happened to me when I was 13. And it's in that sense that I really do feel and believe that people who like having power over others, who often gravitate into positions of power in the government, and you can see it in Australia where people like Peter Dutton end up Minister for Immigration and Border Protection. And I think they are the most dangerous people on the planet. They're the most dangerous. People talk about arsonists going out and lighting fires, setting fire to the countryside. And I guess Samuel is the arsonist in this story. He's the one who lights the fires, although he does it with his eyes, with his mind, which is kind of weird. But his brother, Daniel, his identical twin brother, Daniel, he's the one with the desire to have power over other people. And not all politicians are like that. Not all politicians are power hungry and wanting to have power and authority over people. For example, Natasha Stott-Despoja doesn't strike me as a power hungry kind of person. And yet, I was very disappointed when I went to see my local member, Mike Kelly, and I spoke to his immigration person. So, you know, we've got a liberal government in Australia. They shouldn't be called liberals because they're actually the opposite of liberal. But in my view, given my recent experiences, they are bullies. And I think it's pretty disappointing because I went to see my local member, spoke to the immigration person, and she basically defended immigration, who had not notified me of the decision and have given me no hope of any refund. I mean, $7,000 was just under $7,000 is the application fee, which I borrowed. I mean, I'm someone who struggles to work. I do work, but I struggle to work, and it's really demoralizing when you end up being the victim of your own government, being a victim of bullying all over again, having been bullied as a kid at school, having had this horrible thing happen to you, being disbelieved repeatedly. And I have to say, being disbelieved as an adult when I was trying to get my head around what happened to me when I was younger, really did ruin my life in a big way. It ruined the last decade of my life. It made it very, very unpleasant to the point where I would say ruined. And then to have the government come, and smash me again in such a horrifying way is definitely enough for me to want to make a prophecy. And a twin prophecy. And I feel like I am being backed up. I'm being backed up by Jacob, the 11-year-old, and the other one I haven't mentioned yet is Nathan. Nathan Breeze, who died on the Saturday the 7th of February 2009, which was Black Saturday. And Nathan came from Kinglake West in Victoria. And Nathan wants to back me up. Nathan wants my prophecy to be right. This is a prophecy against people like Christopher Crawley, people like Peter Dutton, people who like having power over other people, who then lie and manipulate, use propaganda, deceive people, people who think their opinions matter more than facts, people like Donald Trump, who accuses other people of being fake news merchants when he's probably the biggest fake news merchant on the face of the planet himself, which is pretty disturbing given his position. Yeah, I just think it's pretty scary, don't you think? I think it is. I think it's scary that people like Daniel, who is unquestionably the evil twin in this story when you read it. Samuel is quite likeable, even though Samuel is the killer and the arsonist, I guess, if you can call that arson when you have pyrokinesis and you can make fire just by looking at something, staring at it, which would be a cool trick if I could do that with Peter Dutton, actually. I might have to practice. But yeah, the way I found this book was kind of weird. I had just written Red Rain equals 69. 2 hours later, I'm in the library. I'm just there using the Wi-Fi. I had to go to the library, use Wi-Fi because we had no internet for a long time at my place. And I just look up, and what book is sitting right next to me? This one, Red Rain. And I had written exactly that a couple of hours earlier. So of course I picked it up and I looked at it and I read the back cover and I thought, this is not a coincidence. This is full on. So I read it. I read the story. It's a book that's been criticized for being a little on the shallow side, but actually that worked for me because it meant there were parts of this story of the characters in the story. It left some room for me to fill in the blanks on the characters, Daniel and Samuel, which I did. My mind did a very good job of colouring them in, if you will. And I liked Samuel. And it was a surprise to me to find that I could like a boy who was actually I guess, when you think about it, Samuel is a serial killer. But he's likable because he doesn't want to do it. He's not... Every crime, every bad thing he does, he's like, oh, if I have to. But Daniel's eager. Daniel's keen for it. He's the one who enjoys having power over others. And it's kind of gets weirder because Jake's killer was named Daniel James Heinrich. And Daniel Heinrich was an arsonist when he was a teenager. He himself was the victim of sexual abuse, it said. And he was a conservative type in the political terms. He was conservative. He had a picture of... he also had a photo of Adolf Hitler and Heinrich Himmler in his house when his house was raided back in August 2016 by the FBI and the cops. So, interesting. Today, the 7th of January 2018. So we are 61 days away from the date that I've flagged as the date to watch for twin tropical cyclones. Riley and Savannah. And R, the 18th letter of the alphabet. 6 threes are 18. And the date I'm flagging is 666 days after the 12th of May 2016. And it was on the 12th of May 2012 that I had my dream, that I couldn't really remember the dream, but I remembered the message written on paper. Have faith, Josh 10:9:45. And I've always thought that's really weird. Have faith, Josh 10:9:45. So the time 9:45 could also be relevant to this prediction, this prophecy, this twin prophecy. I've been saying there's going to be twin signs today, the 7th of January. Twin signs, fire signs. Because the last time I saw John, he was told me he did an assignment on volcanoes. I thought it makes sense that maybe there will be twin volcanoes erupting today. Maybe Mount Agung and Mount Sinabung in Indonesia, something like that. But I'm noticing a lot of other things already today to do with fire and the colour red, and it's kind of weird. It's like, So there are fires, there's been fires burning around here, there and everywhere. There's emergency warnings being issued in Victoria as I'm speaking. And it's like, so twin fire signs for twin cyclones. Riley and Savannah, R and S, the 18th and 19th letters of the alphabet, but they will actually be the 10th and 11th storms, if I'm right. There will be 11 named cyclones this season, and the last one will be Savannah. Jake was 11. The number of days between today and the 9th of March, Friday the 9th of March, which is the 27th birthday of my partner, my best friend, who I've been cut off from by the brutal government that pretends it's so nice and professional in Australia. It's his birthday on the 9th of March. And he's turning 27. 2 plus 7 is 9. And like I said, it's 666 days after the 12th of May. And 11 storms. I've talked about Jake, who was 11 years old. The other boy who's behind me is Nathan Breeze. And from today, Sunday, the 7th of January, 2018, we are 61 days away from Friday, the 9th of March, 2018. And 61 is the value of the word, or the name, Breeze. Nathan Breeze. Breeze. So yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think, well, when I say it's not a coincidence, it is a coincidence, but it's a meaningful coincidence. That's what I mean. If I say it's not a coincidence, I mean it's a meaningful coincidence. A meaningful coincidence is a coincidence that makes sense. Instead of just being random and meaningless, it makes sense to the person who noticed it. And Carl Jung used to talk about, he coined the term synchronicity. And so he noticed coincidences in life, and a lot of people do. And just because you notice coincidences or pay attention to coincidences, that does not equal schizophrenia. And there are some psychiatrists out there who seem to think it does. And it doesn't even equal mental illness. There's all kinds of reasons why people have mental issues. Being cut off from your partner by the government is a big one. That made me suicidal to the extreme back in 2015. And, you know, it does. Being cut off from the people you love, that's what it does. Because it hurts. It hurts too much. Nathan Breeze died in a bushfire. Most of his family died with him, but not all. And the pain of the people left behind is too much. So it's been a long time since, it's coming up to 9 years since Black Saturday, since those bushfires. One thing Nathan shares, and I know he does, he shares my... Nathan's not an angry type of kid. He has the most amazing sense of humour that you'll ever find. But he does not have much time for people who are climate change deniers, to put it bluntly, because he knows what it's about. To die in a firestorm is no fun. And, you know, people that put their opinion ahead of the facts of the world, that's a form of arrogance that kills people. And that's got more in common with Daniel in this story than it does with Samuel. Power-hungry people who like having power over others are more dangerous than terrorists. They are more dangerous than arsonists, more dangerous than firebugs, because they are the ones who guarantee that the violence and the crap will never end. It will keep going. War. There is nothing more horrifying than war. And people in positions of power who use war to maintain their power are the most dangerous people in the world. Far more dangerous than little isolated terrorists and, you know, criminals. Of course, no one wants anarchy, and no one wants to be on the receiving end of a bullet from a gun fired by a criminal either. But the biggest danger facing humankind is actually people in positions of power who like having power over others. Daniel is that type of person in this story. It comes across really well. Samuel, no.